for next season. I want to talk about who's coming and who's going. You mentioned Tyrese Hunter. That's a good segue. I don't want to be like, I don't think if Tyrese Hunter's plan is to like NBA or bust, like that's what's in his mind, that's the right move. May I remind everyone how deep this draft class is? 2023 NBA draft class has been talked about as like that type of once in a generation thing where you got Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson at the top of draft boards, two guys that in most years are surefire number one overall picks. Scoot Henderson easily would be the number one overall pick right now in the 2024 draft class if you're looking at mocks. So I think Tyrese Hunter, if we're looking at who's coming and who's going, I actually still have Tyrese Hunter at like 80% chance to return to Texas next season because if he were to enter the transfer portal, I think that would have happened already. Like I think he would have announced today that if not, a lot of players do like I'm declaring for the NBA draft, and if not, I'm entering the transfer portal. Like if I don't get drafted, I'm entering the transfer portal. He didn't do that. He told Terry that, if he doesn't get drafted, he's coming back.
A little different.
We've seen this before. Dillon Mitchell has done it. Marcus Carter's done it, where they declare for the NBA draft, they don't get drafted, and they come to Texas. I probably think that's what's going to happen. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on Tyrese Hunter.
Yeah, no, not really. I agree with you that definitely leaning towards. If you had to ask me right now, I'd say he's going to be suiting up for the Horns next year. I just think that he can raise his stock so much more by playing another year or two in college and kind of find skills. Like you said, he doesn't have the measurables that are going to blow you out of the water. But he is a guy who, if he comes back for his junior year of college basketball, can turn into a dominant offensive player. I mean, we saw it this past season. He has the shot creation and step back in his bag. It just isn't the most consistent. And that's something that you can fine tune. We saw Marcus Carter, fifth year of college basketball this year, turn that into a very viable way to score the basketball. And I think Tyrese Hunter could go down the same path. I just think he needs some fine tuning around the edges and make up for that lack of crispness with, say like a 6'7" span or something like that. So I think it'd be in his best interest to return. I hope he does. That said, whatever the player wants to do, you got to think that they're going to vet through all their options. But I do think it is a good sign for Rodney Terry too that Hunter has basically kind of said, I'm either going to go play professional ball or I'm going to come back to Texas. He's not going to try to play college basketball somewhere else. I think that's a good sign for Terry to right off the bat.
You saw him improve down the stretch this season. I don't know if that's just because he's a guy that just thrives in March or what. That was the case at Iowa State, and that was surely the case this year at Texas. But he had a good run during the non-con as well, at least the first 6 or 8 games. I do think that it would make the most sense for him to return, come back, prove yourself. At that point, you'd be the projected starting point guard, I think, next year. I'll get into my roster matrix that I have put together here in a moment, but I think it's interesting to see what happens with him. But the next name that I have up is Dylan Disu. I have Dylan Disu right now at about a 60% chance of returning to Texas. I really don't know. I don't know, injuries were so common for him, and he finished the season on a high note that I don't know if he wants to go through another coaching change and have to rehab through more injuries and whatnot. Or I say rehab or fight through more injuries. I don't know, but there's a lot of reasons for Dylan Disu, I think, to go to the NBA. To the same note, he was really good in Rodney Terry's offense, and again, there's opportunities in the 2024 draft class. It's not very deep among big men either. So, see if you can have another solid season. I mean, his run in the last few weeks of the season was as good as right before he got injured at Vanderbilt. So maybe try to put a full season together. That's why I would say 60% instead of 50.
Yeah, I think throughout the whole season, it was more all right, Disu, he has eligibility left, but he's probably going to be gone. I don't know if he ever came out and explicitly stated that, that's just kind of the vibe that I was seeming to get. I think, while this is counterintuitive, I think him playing well at the end of the season is almost better for his chances to come back next year. Because if, say, he closed out the year and, he didn't have any of these crazy games in the tournament and he was just, 8 points a game with 5 rebounds a game, and that's just, and it's like, all right, we can do in college, like, let's go see if we can develop in the G League and make something happen. But I think those last couple of games showed the fans, showed us, showed him that, like you said, there's a chance he could put a full season together like he did as a sophomore at Vanderbilt and dominate the Big 12 as like a 15-point, 10 rebound a game guy. And if you do that, you might turn yourself into a first-round draft pick in 2024, and that's where you get the upfront money. So I think Disu has a very good choice, because just on like his skill alone and his size, he's going to get a chance in the NBA, at least the G League. He's going to go through the developmental system, and someone's going to take a chance on him. And if he's not drafted, he's definitely going to be immediately signed to a summer league team.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because like there's definitely two varying arguments here. Like, does he try to do what like Jalen Wilson did this year? And like, Jalen Wilson goes from like a borderline late second round pick to undrafted to, All-American, potential first round pick in a deep draft class this year. Like, that type of rise, he could. I mean, hell, you saw the way he's played in the last few weeks, some of the tools he has. Yeah, I mean, he could be, I'm not going to say first team All-American expectations, but one of the best players in the Big 12, sure. He could absolutely do that. Err on the side of caution and say that there is almost equal chances, I think, of both happening. Because, yeah, I mean, he'd be a fifth-year senior. He's battled through a lot of injuries. He's ending the season on a high note. Like, you could logically see that going either way. The next few names I have up here are all interesting cases. The next three I'm going through were all signees in the 2022 class. And before I get into that, Alex Anamikwe, I don't know if you saw that. I believe he told Rodney Terry he's coming back. Like, so doesn't sound like a threat or transfer portal. I mean, yeah, Anamikwe is not going to the NBA draft. So that's good. I actually have two players, at least on the wing, locked in, because that now makes Brock Cunningham and Alex Anamikwe your roster that's set in stone for next season. Along with presumably Ron Holland and AJ Johnson. I'll start here. Arterio Morris. There's that clip that sticks out to me from March Madness where he looked super dejected in the locker room, I would assume, for getting limited minutes, but he made some mistakes on the defensive end in the NCAA tournament that were pretty drastic. I think he's probably going to return, but I would put it at, I guess I'm going to put percentage chances on all these, like 70 to 75% chance he comes back. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it was an interesting season because, like, as a star, he was kind of in a logjam, especially, I mean, we knew Marcus Carr and Trey Hunter are going to be the starting guards, and then the way Serge Jabari Rice emerged. And Morris definitely had some bright spots. I remember listening because the Arkansas scrimmage wasn't broadcast on TV.
Yeah.
So I remember listening on the radio, and Terry hit like 5 threes, and I was like, oh my God, we've done it. We've signed an elite freshman guard who is going to make a difference right away. And that didn't come to fruition, but that just kind of shows you that he has the talent. He did have a couple games this year where, or even just like a couple of few-minute stretches where he hit a couple shots, got to the rim, and really there. Will say, while I agree with you, I know what clip you're referring to, and kind of even like eyes of Texas and some stuff like that, he didn't seem bought all the way in, but where he got put on the floor, he would play his tail off, and he was never kind of lagging around there. Obviously, he made a lot of freshman mistakes, but he was always making the mistakes at 110%. For a guy who's kind of like checked out, I don't think they're going to be playing like that. So that does give me some hope that nothing is really strained, and he's just a really competitive guy, and was upset in the moment that he didn't get some more minutes. But Yeah, in general, I think he's a guy who, if he does come back, he could easily slot in as a starting guard. And in college basketball, a lot you see that freshman to sophomore leap, where guys just grow exponentially. They got another offseason to work in the strength and conditioning program, and
I spoke on this all season. I think he's got all the talent in the world, and that type of athlete with his type of skill set is screaming first round draft pick if he can have a big sophomore campaign. I mean, if that dude has a big sophomore campaign, he could be a lottery pick in the blink of an eye. Think like Davion Mitchell at Baylor. And Terrio is a much better athlete than Davion. So Davion was a junior when he was a lottery pick, I think. Was he not?
Yeah, junior,
yeah.
He was a transfer. Yeah, he had some years under his belt, yeah.
And so, I mean, I think for Terrio, he's just got to be, patience. And like Rodney Terry, I think some people might forget this or might not know it, but Rodney Terry actually developed two NBA combo guards at Fresno State. The one that sticks out, I mentioned this name a lot, but Tyler Johnson. Rodney Terry, I think, made the tournament once at Fresno, but I mean, developing two NBA combo guards at like not even a mid-major program is not something to sleep on. I think that's something that Terrio should pay attention to and can learn from, So I think there would be a lot of potential with him returning to Texas for another year. I'm going to put this up right quick. I've got what I believe is a version of a roster matrix for next year. It's just a simple spreadsheet, but I know that this is so interchangeable, but this is kind of what we're looking at right now, I think. Terrio, I think, probably coming back, even though for a lot of these guys, there's always the threat of entering the transfer portal or the NBA draft, as there was with Tyrese Hunter, as abrupt as that was. But yeah, let's keep going down the list here. Rowan Brumbaugh, I think that's an interesting one. I don't know why I pronounced Rowan so crisply, but he was kind of the forgotten player of the 2022 class. I think that's a good way to put it. He was the only one that took a red shirt. He's a 6'4" point guard. Isn't he from like New Hampshire?
Yeah, he played at charter school in Massachusetts.
Okay, so yeah, from New England, and he, a lot of length. And I think he's a guy that could be a really good floor general. I actually mentioned in a piece I did early in the season, I think I mentioned 3 or 4 NBA draft caliber players that Texas has on the team, and I actually mentioned Brumbaugh. He's got the length. He's got the tools. In terms of feel for the game on both ends of the floor and speed of the game, it's going to take him a year or two to get that pace. I don't know. I've heard potentially he could go to the portal. He's a Chris Beard guy. Chris Beard was the one that swung that recruitment late in the 2022 cycle for Texas. So, Brumbaugh is the type of guy that you see those cases a lot where a coach leaves, a guy took a red shirt, and then I don't know if he's necessarily going to follow the coach, but maybe go closer to home, maybe just find a better fit for the system. I don't know. I put him at like a 50% chance maybe to return, but
yeah, that's unfortunate to hear because he's a guy that I thought, I was the decision to redshirt him just because even if he didn't have the red shirt, he wasn't going to play that much. So it's like, what difference does it really make? And I think Beard probably pitched to him like, hey, you're a guy who can run my offense. And maybe by the time you're a fifth-year senior, like be like an All-American at the collegiate level. I think that's kind of the picture he had for him. Because, with the ball in his, he reads the game really well. And everything that I've heard and seen and read, he's the type of guy you want on the court as a floor general. And so if he did stick around, it would be perfect for him to go over the reins as kind of the back guard potentially. 50%, is that just kind of a feeling you get or what does that come? He's someone that I want to see stick around for sure.
These are all feeling based, except for Tyrese Hunter. That one's more like reaching out, affirming multiple sources, that sort of thing. Not necessarily in his camp, but just like NBA and close to Texas, that sort of thing. Reports, that sort of stuff. For Morris, that one is more feeling based, but also a source or two. It just, again, not around him, just more around the program. And also it stems back during the season. It just, I just, I don't know if, I don't know. I don't want to speculate on Morris. True freshman in this class or in this program. Dillon Mitchell was quite clearly the one that had the best connection with Rodney Terry. I believe he was the closest. I think Rodney Terry was one of the leading recruiters for Mitchell as well when he was coming out of high school. And so, Mitchell, it's not about, and, I guess we'll talk about Dillon Mitchell now. Mitchell, it's not about the relationship with Terry or the connection with the program. It's about, does he want to enter the NBA draft now or next year? I've spent a lot of time talking about his game and the lack of development there in articles, but he's got all the talent in the world. I don't know, man. He's got to find a way to expand his range offensively and to get a little bit more purpose-driven defensive chops. Because as good as a one-on-one defender as he was, there were some out-of-control plays he had where he hurt himself. I think he's got to find more control in his defensive game. There's a lot of refinement there. I don't know if he wants to enter this year or next. He could be a first-round pick this year potentially. If he returns and has a good year, he would be a lottery pick next year. So I actually put Dillon Mitchell at a 65% chance to return right now. The rumblings of him entering the draft are a little too much for me to put it at 80%. So I'm going to keep that one pretty black and white, that it's does he want to enter this year or next? I think it's more advantageous for him to enter next year.
Yeah, if he does come back, there hopefully is more room for him to potentially grow in his offensive game. Not just practice and scrimmages, but to actually get the ball and get it to him in game. So I think that would be kind of your pitch, is our roster is clearing out a little bit, and you can be a guy that we kind of can show that we can turn to. And obviously a little bit different comparison, and even if Mitchell came back, I wouldn't expect him to shoot threes next year, but we did see Kai Jones into sophomore year. During that sophomore year, he turned into a decent three-point shooter, and that rose his stock to be a lottery. So kind of the same for Mitchell. Come back and show you can do it on the offensive end, because what is his length, his athleticism, his speed. That stuff's going to be there this year or next. So I think your pitch would be, hey, you can raise your stock here a good amount, and this is how I'm going to do it for you.
We have Ron Holland and AJ Johnson coming into the mix. I think there's the potential that Ron Holland may be competing for the starting job at the 4. He would not be starting at the 5. I would be super surprised if he was. His game is best fit to play at the 3 or the 4, probably at the 4 at Texas. There's the potential, if you saw the roster matrix I was showing, I actually have Ron Holland as the starting power forward next year. I think that is probably going to be the case. Dillon Mitchell did not show enough for me this year playing or starting at the 4. Do you think AJ Johnson comes in and starts at the 2?
I think it depends what the roster looks like. I think if Terrio comes back and Tyrese comes back, that's your sport, unless you land some gem in the transfer portal. I don't think Johnson would start over either of those two guys. That said, I do think Johnson was going to play 20 to 25 minutes a game, and he could, play a third guard role on this team if it kind of shakes out how we're looking like. Texas is probably going to be pretty active in the portal. Already reaching out to some high-level names, making an Elite 8 run, and then hiring the coach immediately after. Guys are going to want to come to Austin and play. So this is kind of just the bones of what the roster would be. There's no reason to sit here and speculate 25 different names. We're kind of going through the guys who we already have on this roster who we know are coming in next year. So let's just make that clear. There's definitely going to...
You make a good point. I should have highlighted that earlier. Sorry, I've been looking into portal stuff so much at this point. I figured that it's just, to me, become super obvious. Yes, that is, portal will be huge. Let's wrap up this basketball segment talking about potential starting 5 for next year, because I think this is a good way to look at potential roster needs. The only portal piece I've done that was more roster analysis since Texas was ousted in the Elite 8 was the 3 biggest positional needs in the portal. I identified center, just because even if Dylan Disu comes back, I don't know what else you have behind him unless you want to run Dillon Mitchell full time at the 5. I think it's time for Texas to finally go get more length. Yeah. I mean, and it's just too risky, I think, to just assume that Dylan Disu is coming back and he's going to be your answer at the 5. Also, point guard or a combo guard, I would like, especially with all that's going on right now with Tyrese Hunter, I would like to know that we have like someone that's coming back or someone that can come into the mix and be a true floor general for Texas. If not, maybe get someone that can play a combo guard role that you can at least get more depth and experience in the backcourt. Because right now, Tyrese Hunter is by far your most experienced. If he comes back, beyond that, it's Arterio Morris. And then after that, I would like to see more of a 3-and-D sort of wing come into the mix. We have Brock Cunningham and Alexander Meekwe, but Brock Cunningham, you could actually describe him as 3-and-D at this point, and that is actually kind of accurate. But get someone else that can play the 2 or the 3. Maybe more of a Serge Rice that could be like a 6th man. I guess that would be a better way to describe that role, is like 6-man wing, just energy boost, good offense, reliable.
Yeah, I would say, if there's a Serge Rice in the portal, get that guy.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. No, but in all seriousness, I agree with your center take. It'll be interesting to see how Terry wants to construct this team, because with looking at the roster matrix you were going over, this is a team that play without a true center and just be really up and down and like one of the highest paced teams in the country, because the athleticism and the ball skills are kind of like off the charts with that group. It's important. I just think my point here is that there's a lot of talent in the portal, and we're going to get some contributors out of there, no matter what happens with the guys we kind of went over before.
But yeah, you got to find the right guys that fit in the locker room that are going to fit the play style. It's not all, okay, we need 7 feet here, we need 6'8" on the wing. It's not always that black and white. Okay. I want to do this before we round out the basketball segment. I'm going to go through each position in the starting 5, and we can either say that it'll be a potential returning player or portal that you think will occupy that starting spot. Point guard. I think more than likely returning guy at this point.
Agreed.
Okay. 2 guard. I think probably portal. As many options as we have there, I
think there are a ton of good options in the portal. Hunter and Morris are going to return, so I think they're get out of the portal that would start over Arterio Morris. But because I think both of them return, I'll lean towards the backcourt being both returned.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Interesting. Yeah. I just there's too much noise right now surrounding like Texas and a few different guards, namely Reese Dixon Waters, that like, I don't know if that's just for depth, but it's like eventually you'd see enough 2 guards that they're going after that. They're looking for something there. The wing, I think probably returning. It would not shock me if Brock Cunningham was the starting 3 on the season or for the season opener next year.
Yeah, especially if like Ron Holland and or AJ Johnson make their way in the lineup, or you're adding someone from the portal. I think having Cunningham in there as a stabilizer, like what you're going to get.
So far, you're 3 for 3 returning players starting.
Yeah.
At the 4, I'm pretty locked into returning guy.
Are you counting true freshmen as like returners, or?
Yeah, sorry, incoming freshmen as well.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm with you. Then I think Holland is probably going to be the starting 4.
Yeah, me too. If not, it wouldn't. I mean, Dillon Mitchell, the potential of him returning. I mean, he started before throughout the season. So, at the 5,
this is where I would go. Sorry, this is where I would go. I think portal.
You don't think Dylan Disu is returning then?
I don't think Disu is going to come back. No.
Okay.
If Disu comes back, then definitely he's going to be his spot.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So otherwise, yeah, I would completely agree. Portal. If you saw the roster matrix, yeah, I didn't have anyone at the 5 behind Disu. So obviously that means if he's gone, I think they're going to have to find someone else. And the caliber, let me mention this too, just the caliber of guys they're going after in the portal are starting caliber centers. They're not depth guys. So keep that in mind. So you kind of hit the nail on the head when you're talking about Dillon Disu doesn't return. So, okay. What do you think the number is for, beside like the signees we have so far in the 2023 class? How many more additions do you think there are this offseason?
I think it'll be 2 freshmen and 2 transfers.
You think 2 more freshmen in addition, or like?
Oh, no. The 2 freshmen we have, 2 transfers. And I think there is a chance you add some preferred walk-on.
Okay.
But I think it's going to be the 2 freshmen, 2 transfers. I think you're going to have I think everyone but Disu is going to come back and make 5 returners. So that's like a 9-man rotation. So that's not going to be a top team going into next season. I'll say that if it turns out that way.
Yeah, I was going to put the number at 3 to 4 players in addition. I think I'm a little bit more skeptical of portal departures than you are. So
okay, yeah.
They're still kicking the tires on some 2023 guys that have recently decommitted. So keep that in mind. We'll see what happens there. But otherwise, yeah, I'm putting the number right now at 3 to 4 in addition to what we have already.
No, it's just turning into 365 day cycle for everyone involved. It's not a bad thing, but that's just kind of nature of the beast nowadays.